Play devil's advocate. Taking your shoes off at home is more sanitary.
To play Devil Wears Prada advocate, I have rights. A woman's right to shoes.
Hello, lovers. Welcome back to And Just Like That, The Writer's Room, the official podcast of And Just Like That from Max. I'm Michael Patrick King, writer, director, and executive producer of And Just Like That. And I'm here in the writing room today with executive producer, writer, and director Julie Rottenberg.
Hi.
Executive producer and writer Elisa Zuritsky.
Hello.
As well as writer of this episode, executive story editor Rachel Palmer.
Hello.
So today we're discussing episode 5 called Under the Table, written, as I said, by Rachel Palmer and directed by Julie Rottenberg. And I'm going to tell you right now, please, it's a request, not a tell. Please, if you haven't seen episode 5, Under the Table, please go and watch it now because you're going to know what's under the table and we don't want you to yet. Okay, before we actually get into the actual start of this episode, which is very much what I'm thinking I want to talk about, is the fact that you never know when something's going to become an idea that then becomes realized. In season 2, when Carrie moved into Gramercy Park, that building, I was standing on the street and I looked at the actual building and I thought, she has a top 2 floors. Who lives under her?
And I remember when we started shooting in that gorgeous, gorgeous apartment of hers, the new Gramercy. It was the end of season 2. And I remember you saying, Michael, a neighbor.
No, and I was even more specific. It flew into my mind. I even thought it's a Brit, he's a male, and he's a successful writer of famous biographies.
And underneath Carrie Bradshaw. And then what I love more than anything is the reality. You know, my favorite thing is the reality of living in New York City. And in this episode, you have the reality that we all live with, people above us, people below us, the reality of someone living underneath Carrie Bradshaw with all her freaking high heels, and then the reality of Miranda with the neighbor.
Yeah, it is truly a perfect storm because what we have is a cranky Brit moving in underneath her. And it starts with her. We are really doubling down now on the period piece.
I just want to add that this kind of the bolt of inspiration, and I too remember the day standing with you on Gramercy Park when you had that inspiration. That, my friends, is how an entire season can happen because Michael, as the showrunner, head writer, having that vision, and who knows where it comes from.
You don't know.
It like a door opens in his imagination and then season 3 can exist.
Well, then it's about just
wonderful.
Making it manifest somehow with all the cleverness that we have and the ideas that we have. But this episode itself, now that we've set the table, that the name of the episode is Under the Table, starts with Carrie Bradshaw doing a voiceover of her book as the woman. And it's a beautiful sort of step into this is what a period book sounds like if she writes it.
Well, also after the horror show of the last episode of such a dark, awful moment for Carrie.
Yeah, and I love that
Aiden.
she's choosing to let the light in to her life as opposed to just like shutting down that Aiden's not there.
Yeah.
She's choosing,
She flung open
joy.
the windows is the first line that you wrote, Rachel.
Right. It's like last episode, the door kind of closed with Aiden, and then, as they say, another window opens.
And it's that thing, too, about like, if you're a writer, sometimes you're lucky enough to be able to move past what's real and into what you want to have happen. And Carrie dives from that stilted ending of the last episode into a imaginary, wonderful moment. And she talks about horses and carriages coming and going. And then we get the first glimpse from above of this mysterious, clearly tweed hat wearing gentleman going
Pipe
under her.
Smoking.
Yeah, and she backs off to shy, and then she basically says, life will take you on an adventure, but you just need to step into it.
And that like stepping back from the window is so Carrie. Like, she likes to observe. She's the observer. She doesn't want to be observed.
You're
Right,
Observing.
Elisa. Yeah, right. She is the observer. And so she comes down the stairs, and then we begin going from not a period piece, but into a very contemporary piece that Julie had to direct. And I remember when it's the shoe montage, basically.
Can we talk about the shoe montage?
Yeah, I mean, like,
start talking.
The wardrobe
Fabulous.
department was so excited. They were like, oh, good. How many shoes are we going to do?
I believe, didn't you want 10?
I
think
knew
we
no
had
less than
10.
10.
No less than
It
10, right.
was-
Okay, so I
But
have
it wasn't
to
just the shoes. You could see the bottoms of her outfits.
Yes,
And
Well,
like,
this is
I just
also
wanted to be
the
like,
example of like you type it on the page
Right.
and then what is
Yeah.
shoes.
it?
I read shoes, I thought shoes. And then, of course, the reality of our wardrobe department is they made such a meal out of it. The cat. I mean, can we talk about the cat?
Well, in the shoe montage. How could shoe not be in the shoe montage? I love
Yes.
the little tiny glimpse of him, and it delighted me because the cat's actually running from her.
Yes.
Like, there's too much noise for even the cat. The cat's
Well-
like, I'm out of here.
Well, also, what was thrilling to me that was such a delicious, like, ice cream sundae was we're getting to see someone else's perspective also.
Meaning
Down
Duncan.
there.
Mm.
Yeah. The amazing Johnny Cake.
The mystery man.
But that felt radical that we're moving downstairs. Like, that's what I
Right.
wanted to do as a kid in the doll hat when you play with your dolls. It's like, who is under here?
And it's something we've never done before, and we talked about that in the room. Somebody observing Carrie that we don't even know who they are. And it's Jonathan Cake, the amazing actor we were blessed enough to have play Duncan, because Duncan is a big on the page. We were like, who's this guy going to be? We had a great sort of arc thought for him. So he's now in an apartment we've never seen. It's a very worn apartment.
we wanted to feel like his place was the opposite of Carrie's. It's just like, I love
Dark.
that it's old.
Dark.
Like
Yeah.
the stove is old. There's like linoleum,
little
I think.
hobbit-
I wanted it to feel like it wasn't even his place. It
Right.
was somebody
Yes.
else's place.
He's
and what we
squatting.
discover is that he comes from London for 6 months to lock himself up and write. But right now he can't write because Carrie's walking all over the place and going places in the day. She's got a lot of outfits for daytime.
And we wanted to cover his face. We wanted to make that a reveal. So, I mean, Johnny Cake, without a word and even without his face, what he did in that bed, I mean, it's a tour de force of sleeplessness.
Yeah.
So then he gets out of bed
It's
and
a
he comes
silent
up the
movie.
stairs and he comes up the stairs with a head of steam, as they say, and he knocks on her door and we stop on Carrie's beautiful yellow shoe and she's got her foot up like she's in basically, I don't know,
Hello.
hello, like she's a ballerina in a jewelry box. And
Right.
she goes, and then we see this man who we discover is named Duncan.
And the biggest challenge, I will say, in directing Johnny Cake is he is so warm and polite. Like, if anything, the note I most frequently had to give him was, you're not
Friendly.
not friendly.
Well,
You're not that
Don't be
polite.
charming.
He kept just he can't help himself. It was
Well,
like, that's very kind, dear. It's like, no.
She's not dear.
She's not.
You hate her.
No, John is a really amazing actor. He goes from the inside out. What he's wearing is important. What he's feeling is important. But he does have an enormous amount of natural charm. And the reality is what we didn't want, Rachel, was what?
a meet cute.
Yeah, we didn't want this to be an instant rom-com. We wanted it to be a real situation where somebody is
It's a
unhappy.
problem. It's a
and-
huge problem for her.
Could you at least remove your high heels?
Okay. Now you've gone too far.
Then we're-
And we had a lot of debate in the room about that very, like, her reaction to the request. What kind of a neighbor is Carrie?
Right.
Being asked to take off her shoes.
Like, she's generally
As
considerate.
hilarious as it is for her to be totally offended by it, I feel like we had to make him a big enough dick about
Yeah.
being
he had to be really
noisy
offensive.
to really earn her being pissed off by that suggestion, because she's a considerate person, Carrie. And I remember we had lively conversations about, like, just how
Well,
how to earn
I'm
that.
now going to speak a little bit on Duncan's side as somebody who isn't myself, not a great neighbor. The last time he was here, the woman was bedridden and upstairs,
Yes,
two
yes.
floors up. So this is a major intrusion. And anybody who writes, I don't know how much silence you need, how much distraction you need when you're writing, but some people...
silence.
I need silence.
I'm curious. Lise, do you have music on? We work together only.
I actually I
Part of the
don't
process.
need silence because I can have music, but it has to be my choice of music. You know, I can write to music sometimes.
Rachel?
I don't need silence, but I do write in silence. Most of my writing happens in my head when I'm doing the dishes or showering,
Right.
or like I'm bad at sitting down and
Only
doing
I
it.
had in the shower.
Yeah, a lot of the good writing walks as you get up from the computer and walk away.
Yes.
Or go to the bathroom.
Yes.
You
Right,
immediately-
or just
that's when
walk
you
through
solve.
the city.
But I will say too, I think a little bit for Duncan is, and you learn this later in the episode, is he's having a little bit of a panicky writer's block, and it's so much easier to be like, well, it's because of this. It's because I can't have silence. It's because I can't sleep. It's because of her, as opposed to being like, well, what's going on with me? Why can't I get this writing done?
Yeah, well, it's a little bit desperate. And anytime you start something, it is a little bit more panicked than when you finish something. You're a little bit more freaked out. But as Carrie says, you mentioned Carrie as a good neighbor. Is she, isn't she? In the next scene, she protests that she is a very good neighbor and she's never had a problem with the neighbor.
I like
record-
my Carrie.
Yes.
My Carrie
Yes,
is
agreed.
considerate.
My Carrie is considerate too. The neighbors aren't always considerate, i.e. Lisette,
Yes, yes,
with the
with their
loud
screaming
music and the
friends,
party
yeah.
and everything. But
Right.
she was very considerate.
I think she's a decent,
Yeah,
neighbor.
she's a good New Yorker neighbor, which is like, I mind my own business and I don't get in your way.
And you saw she tried like every approach of being like kind of cute, making it funny,
Yes.
inviting him in. And then I love the one idea she didn't offer is the solution of taking her
And
shoes off.
Seema, always the good friend / real estate, says, well, we have to kill him because you can never really evict someone in New York, so we're going to have to kill him. And then when Miranda hears his name is Duncan Reeves, her eyes light up because, as we all know, Miranda loves a book. She loves to read historical books from the Sex and the City canon. She was always reading books. And she lights up and she goes, Duncan Reeves, the writer.
I love the competitiveness of Miranda that Charlotte says Harry's been reading that for the last 5 years. Read it in a weekend.
Yeah, I think she did read it in a week. His Winston Churchill, right?
She's
Yeah,
such
that's
an
what his book
A+
is.
goody
But
goody.
everybody knows him but Carrie because she, in our writing world, got jock-blocked by her mentally. She didn't think about it because she was so preoccupied by the fact that someone was yelling at her and telling her to take off her shoes. But on the way home from lunch, Carrie and Charlotte are talking, and it starts with her saying, should I get him a gift basket? And of course, Charlotte says yes.
Of course. And this was really our moment to, it's like we all lived through that last episode with Aiden. That was really upsetting. It was really intense. I feel like any good friend would be checking in with Carrie. And the surprise for me was the relief that and you see, she had been doing cartwheels to try to make it
You're
work.
talking about the moment when Charlotte says, how do you feel about Aiden? And she says, I feel like I can't do anything more than I've done.
To be honest, it's kind of a relief to not be thinking about what I should be doing every day about it. It's out of my hands.
Wow. That is so far past any ability that I would ever have.
I'm just being more realistic, less romantic.
Yeah, so it's in a way, it's like she can stop working so hard to try. Look at the first 4 episodes. It's like she was like trying to solve a riddle, and I liked that relief.
And she's practical, and she says we're in each other's lives, but not in that big romantic swell music way right now.
Yeah.
And Charlotte
And
says,
not in the
He
day to
can't be
day.
not in the
every
day to day. And then Charlotte says, I don't know what I'd do without Harry every day. And she's likely you don't have to worry. And, in the lunch scene, the brunch scene, whatever it was, Miranda does sort of co-op Carrie's neighbor pain by mentioning that her neighbor does nothing but play heavy metal music. And now we drop right into Miranda trying to work, and there's just heavy metal music playing.
And this is one of these things where like it might feel like an exaggeration and it's not. If you live in New York City, the issues all around you are ever present. And this was one of these. I love these old classic Sex and the City.
Yeah, it's a
runners
neighbor,
of-
and it's even complicated. It's more current than we used to do because she's an Airbnb renter, so she doesn't even really have ownership or familiarity to tell her neighbor to not stop it. So she basically decides, I'm going to write a note because Miranda's all action, and she slides some note under his door.
I will say, on set, writing the note became a very interesting personality
remember
reveal because Props was like, "What do you want on the note? We didn't do the note," and I was like, again, had no time. I was like, give me a pen. And I'm like doing my version of it. And Cynthia was like, okay, that's, I think my approach was,
Yours was very
I think I
polite.
was sort of like, I'm sure hi, I'm in the apartment across the hall.
Yeah.
I'm sure you don't realize
You
how
were writing.
loud you're.
Yes.
I was trying to
You're
First draft.
diffusing.
Your
I
and-
was
first draft
trying
was
to
long.
massage and like not be angry. And I think we ended somewhere in the middle between turn your fucking music down.
But
Right.
here's the
And also,
question.
Lusa, the script supervisor, jumped into that
Oh,
conversation
yeah.
too.
Well, I think.
But
right.
whose handwriting
Oh,
was
I think it was Lucy. I
Probably
think it's
Props.
mine. No,
Yeah.
I think it's mine. I think it's.
You know, I'm the handwriting for all of Sex and the City. I'm
Sorry.
Miranda's
Oh, that's
handwriting.
You weren't there that
There's
day.
Stanford's
Stanford's,
too.
I'm
Yeah.
Carrie. I'm
All right.
everybody's handwriting. Anyway, just because you're on the set, you're usually directing and you need to do it and you make it up as a writer.
I think you're right. Lusa, our amazing script supervisor, I believe her words were, turn your music down. That was like, you
Because
learn
she's
a lot.
short
It's
and to the
a
point.
Rorschach
Anyway, Miranda
test.
slides it under the door and blissful music comes and it's this happy-go-lucky sort of ukulele return to bliss and it comes down over this gorgeous shot of the Guggenheim Museum where Harry and Charlotte are taking a night walk and here comes our big story point, what we started the season with for Harry and therefore Charlotte.
Case, and what do you know? I got prostate cancer.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh
Keep
my
it together. Keep
God!
it together, honey. Everything is gonna be fine.
This was one of the ideas that like bubbled in your imagination or your gut during the break from second season to third. Do you want to speak to
I mean,
that?
look, we always look for ways to grow people's characters and give actors something to play. And Charlotte has been, for the last two seasons of And Just Like That, pretty buoyant and pretty much there for everybody and pretty much strong mom for everybody. The friend group, her family, everybody, pretty light and in control. And I was like, okay, so if this was a board game, the next card would be Charlotte has an emotional crisis. To give Kristen, who's an amazing actress, something to play that's new.
And it's very much like life, too.
And it's very much-
Eventually,
Also
you're going to pull that card.
happening to so many people.
And so what I came up with was the idea that Harry gets prostate cancer. Now, because it is very much like life, you start to listen and you start to hear, he has prostate cancer, he has prostate cancer, he has prostate cancer. Now, the thing about prostate cancer is that it can have a wide range of success or failure. So it gives us both the drama of the word cancer, which anyone hearing cancer in real life is terrible, but in fiction can be very evocative. And it gives Charlotte something to play, which is the love of her life. She's already said very smartly in the scene before, I don't know what I would do without him.
Also, just to help you all understand the process, you came into when we were breaking season 2 with the idea for Harry to have prostate cancer. And we were all like, oh God, no, no. We had like a big reaction against it. And then it turned out we didn't have room for it. We didn't use it. And then you came back the third season. You were like, guys,
It's time.
guess what?
Well,
We're
you know,
doing it.
I mean, not to make cancer a joke, but it's the same as the banana, that came back in another episode. I feel that there's something that needs to be in the show and it will eventually shake down. Now, the trick that we did with Harry is, what's the request? He asks of her, Rachel. What's the request?
Don't tell anyone.
I mean, come on. That's awful.
Yeah,
Which also
especially for
is
Charlotte.
very real. And we all know people who
I mean, my dad had prostate cancer. He was the same way.
really, he didn't.
Yep. It is that very no one wants to be known as the cancer guy. It's not, it's a
I mean, and the question,
it's a weakness.
The question is that you don't want to be known as the cancer guy, or do you don't even want to talk too much about it because that makes it more real? And how do you think Harry feels in this scene? Is he truly here feeling that it's all going to be okay, or is he?
I think he's taking
No.
care of her.
Yeah.
You know, he knows his wife. He knows she's going to immediately start crying. And I think he's trying to keep it together for both of them.
I mean, he's clearly been going through, you know, the question mark, and he's been waiting. He didn't want to bother her with it until he knew for sure. So I think he's been dreading it a little bit, you know.
And now here's a little of our trickery as writers. We set this up in the 2 episodes before it. In the very first episode where we set up that he had a problem was that he peed himself.
That was episode 3.
And episode 3. And we surrounded that with a lot of comedy. We hid it by having it be a denim button jean thing, and he mistimed his drinks. But the reality was the only reason he peed himself was because we were doing a symptom. We didn't want to just suddenly be like, guess what? That he had prostate cancer. That is a symptom. And in the next episode that we featured Harry in, he was unable to have an erection. And we sort of hid that in the fact that his father was in the next room and he was worried that maybe he was getting old. But here it is.
Right. It worked in each episode on its own. If you don't know this, it's coming.
Right. Well, on purpose, because we didn't want it to be, we wanted them to be funny.
Right.
And both of them were funny.
Right.
Also, I have to share the germ of this idea was my husband, Ben, and I were having a really bad night with the kids. I won't say more, but we were both frustrated and annoyed.
Was my name involved?
And at a certain point, and that we would never do this kind of thing, I was like, I'm going for a walk. And Ben was like, I'm coming. And the kids were just like, ooh. And we left, and we were just like walking fast down Eastern Parkway. And I was so irritated, and I just wanted to get away from them. And it felt so good. And I was like, wow, we never do this. We never take a walk at night. And then it got quiet, and Ben said, I have to tell you something. And now, guys, not prostate cancer, but it was some other health concern. But I remember thinking, oh my God, like here I thought the worst part of my day was like, my kids driving me crazy. And we never take a walk like that. And it was,
I mean, writing is living.
an easy way to give to Charlotte and Harry of like, when he says like, were you trying to get away from the kids too?
One of the bonuses of being a writer is that if something happens to you, you don't have to just survive it. You can actually repurpose it into story. And if you're lucky, it can illuminate and lift up other people. And here Julie just used that story to get us to this moment. And of course, in our true world, you can't have cancer without saying the word glamping in the same scene.
And glamping was an early writer's room idea. We knew we were going to do a summer series. We also realized that Governor's Island has this glamping site, and friends of mine had actually done it, and they had a great time, and it was like on my list of things to do. So it was one of those things that was kind of sounded great, and then was out there looking for a home or like a reason to, okay, what can happen there is really the point.
Right. The thing is, we also knew that families do things, but we have learned from, like, these are families, where would they go in the summer? But we have learned from past episodes that to go so far away from the actual city diminishes, first of all, it's hard production-wise, but secondly, it diminishes the importance of being in New York City.
Yes.
So when the idea was that you could go camping, glamping on Governor's Island is so exotic.
Yeah. You take a boat and then you can see the entire skyline.
City.
I mean,
so which brings us into the other couple that they're going glamping with, which is Lisa and Herbert in their very, very busy morning in Lisa and Herbert's house where the kids are getting ready. She's going out of town to go to Atlanta to film something for her documentary. And she says to him, don't forget we're going glamping.
Now, this is one of these things added to the list of things that few people had examples of this in the room with their partner where it was one of those things where I was like, do I have that? And what I'm saying is, as soon as I went home that day,
It happened.
I had it. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, yes, that
Oh,
is
that's
real.
so funny.
And in real life, you say, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. No, you didn't. And we were thought, how do we do it to make it a little bit
A
funnier?
little punchier.
And then we realized less confrontational, more wondering.
Suspect.
And we came up with that funny, did you?
Did you?
That was just a sound in the room that made us laugh so
Sort of
hard.
like
But
a
did
little
you?
passive-aggressive.
Yes.
But did you? And
Like,
that-
right, I'm not going to, on the record, contradict you and say
Yes.
you didn't tell me. I'm just going to put it out there. Did you?
did you?
Yeah.
It's
Are
a
you
light
that
touch.
sure that you told me?
It's a
Yes.
passive aggressive you did.
Sus.
And it's sus, yes, it's definitely sus. But him saying, I don't know what you're doing because I'm supposed to be taking photographs for his campaign where he's a regular man. And she says, you're going glamping.
The end.
Yeah, the
And
end.
this, by the way, this is one of my, if not my favorite kind of marriage story. I love the day in, day out little like friction between couples who live together forever.
Well,
It's-
and also in this case, we have a little of both. Because on the one hand, it's a funny little
Yeah, that's a-
misunderstanding. On the other
Mhm.
hand, there's something real underneath his sus.
Oh, I like that it's the two couples where one of them is having, fluffy communication problems and the other couple is dealing with cancer.
Right,
Like you
right.
have both of them
That's
going on
true.
at the
That's
same
true.
time.
Yes. Yes.
And also how we behave in front of our friends when we're, as couples and as family.
Yeah, we wanted to do that and also do it in a place where Henry could say, this croque monsieur is divine. That we could show that they were both spoiled and
Yes.
kids at the same time. But you may be wondering, well, where's Seema? Well, I'll tell you where she is. She's been trying to get a bank loan for this entire episode. Seema's journey is about trying to achieve her own company right now.
She's rebuilding herself from the ground up. I mean,
Now,
Mhm.
this is another Sex and the City Easter egg. If anyone happened to recognize the banker and you were a fan of the original series,
and
that
Carrie
is
even references
the
her
one
in
and
this
only
episode.
Stephanie Cannon.
Yes.
Yeah. Stephanie Cannon is the actress that played the bank loan officer in Sex and the City that denied Carrie her apartment
I believe
loan.
it was Ring a Ding Ding, written by
Ring-a-ding-ding.
Amy B. Harris.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah,
You
where she
could
basically, Miss
not-
Bradshaw, you are not a good credit.
Desirable.
Yeah, and we thought how funny to bring Stephanie back for the SATC fans, diehards, and have her actually have a
Turn
Seema.
down and someone else
Turn down
from the
Seema,
universe.
so that when Carrie is actually talking to Seema, she doesn't know it's the same lady, but she does say, oh, I had a woman who once turned me down. But the idea that there's a woman still working in banking, stopping someone on our show from getting a loan was delightful. And the other thing is really the connecting tissue between these two women is how women are overlooked by their bosses, women who are much more competent are overlooked by their bosses, and they bond over that
Yeah.
Or
sort
so
of.
she thinks.
Or so she thinks they bond, which is an illusion because she doesn't wind up getting the loan.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, she's still in the same gig that she had 20 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
right. Oh my God.
I wonder
so
if she still
true.
has it today. It's rough out
And
there.
her boss left early for the day. You know how it is.
Okay, so now we come into the Carrie Bradshaw gift basket moment. Rachel, talk about that.
Well, I love the locally sourced that she just went around the neighborhood and she's like, oh, I'm getting tea from this place and I'm getting wine from that place. And I'm doing all of this stuff to, ingratiate you to the neighborhood, AKA to me.
Yeah.
Well,
Like, I feel
and-
like she's.
Yeah.
And
To-
as Elisa said, I think she thinks of herself as a very considerate
So
neighbor,
now
and
she's
that's what
going
you
to
do.
write the scene where the good neighbor makes it
Mhm.
better.
And she opens
Yeah.
the door to Duncan, who is not in the same scene.
He's not
the good
playing.
neighbor. And what I love about this in performance is that Jonathan doesn't give it up for her. He's much more concerned with lighting that pipe. And Sarah Jessica as Carrie is standing there almost waiting for that scene in her head to start. And it never does.
Yeah.
And she makes that cute, flirty joke. Also, I want to talk about speaking of flirty, we had talked about every time Carrie comes down to Duncan's, we had to make sure she looked like somebody from the school newspaper.
Like Laundry Day,
like
right?
newspaper, like
Yeah.
smart girl, like I'm the mascot of the writing team, not like even if she's in a normal Carrie dress, we begged them not to do it because it would send the signal. People are out
It's so
for
the
Carrie.
opposite of
Right.
yeah, it's so the opposite of what she wore to meet Aiden. You know, that beautiful pink dress with the clavage.
Yeah, you know, it is really an interesting thing that you have to pictures tell stories. And so she's coming down in a sweatshirt, a Carrie Bradshaw sweatshirt, but a sweatshirt.
And still trying to charm him.
Oh, when
it's
he
almost
says-
like her usual
She says, "Oh."
superpower is not working.
Oh, and he's being
It's a
cute.
charm offensive.
And she says to him, I sense a little smile there. And he goes, then you must write fiction. And Sarah Jessica just goes, ooh, like this is abrupt. And then he gives her the gift because he has a heart too.
And
He wants to make it
He's
better
been
too.
thinking.
He
He's
has a
been
gift
thinking
for her.
and planning.
Yeah, and what does he have?
well,
Oh, it's just awful.
The joy of having the fairy tale of Carrie Bradshaw and her beautiful gift basket, and then the reality of the Amazon. He
doesn't even open it.
The
He just
ugliest,
hands her the
thinnest.
package.
Right. No, we actually talked about would he
Yeah.
have opened it? Talk about like props department. Would he have opened it? Would he have checked it out to make sure it was right?
No.
But we decided like
It was
having
perfect. And
her
the
Oh,
the flats,
and
the
talk about
slippers were
choosing
perfect.
Choosing the slippers, yeah.
That
Yeah.
was hard and
because
fun.
when you're
They were
making
all
a
so
show, you
sad.
get, in the pre-production stage, you get called down to the props department or costumes, I guess, in this case. Or no, maybe
it
they
was-
are
They were
props.
together.
Probably
They're
props.
props because she
They're
doesn't put them on.
props.
So you get called down and they've shopped and they've found several pairs of terrible slippers for
Which
you
comes
to
closest to the writing thought. And
Yeah.
that's great respect on every department, but that's really what it does come down. And there's another thing that happens in production. You know, we put a lot of music on the show. We put a lot of effects of horns and cars to make it sound like you're in New York. And I stripped it all out at the moment she opens the Amazon thing because
so
the
Thank you.
sound,
Thank you.
the sound of the bubble wrap, that awful, uncomfortable,
awkward,
like
so-
all the air goes out of the room. The city is completely quiet,
There is-
except for her horror.
I appreciate the thought, but I'm allergic
Allergic to what?
to whatever this is.
Could almost smell it. You know the smell that Amazon sometimes has?
It's like on this show that is always so hyper glamorous in every way, where she's standing in this dark, most unglamorous space she's ever been in, opening the least glamorous. I love it.
Yeah, and it's really in there. And then, of course, she says, thank you, but no. And then she makes her way out and she takes a stand. And Lisa, you said this is one of your favorite lines. She turns and says,
It's New York. There's
Yeah.
noise.
There's
yeah.
noise.
Yeah.
Also, in a way, and directing the scene, I realized she just killed herself to gather a very nice basket. She curated
Yeah,
this
she
whole
second guessed
basket.
that first scene. She second guessed herself. She was
Yes.
like, I'm going to take a stand. And then like, ooh, was I too harsh? Like, should I
Yes.
make up for it? Should I go down there and be charming? And he just still would not give it to her.
But also, I realized for him, he actually had this thought, went out of his way,
Yeah.
ordered these slippers. Really? Like,
Yeah.
you could see it from his perspective.
Yes.
Like,
I just want to also point out that Duncan's very clear. When she says, so you don't have to explore the neighborhood, he says, I don't come to New York to explore. He keeps saying, I'm only here to write. And she says it's not a prison sentence or whatever she says at some
I
point.
think I really love that last line for her because she has, she's tried everything. She's been her sweetest, cutest, funniest self.
Sparkly.
And I just love the raw truth of what she says and how she says it. Just get over yourself.
yes. Well,
You've come to the loudest city in the world.
She's not going to internalize his
Right.
bullshit.
I'm not playing anymore. Yeah,
I
she
like
drops
that.
the whole
I like
thing.
that, Carrie. I
Yes.
like that
Yeah.
moment for
Well,
her.
Yeah, you mentioned always that you like
I
that
just
moment
like it
because
'cause it's
she's
so
just
real.
like, I'm not people pleasing right
Let's
now.
let's
I mean, it's
drop
kind of the
everything
same thing as with
else.
Aiden. You know,
Yeah.
she kept trying, and then at the end, it's like, I did my
Too
best
bad.
and I tried.
Also, in terms of him being on even some kind of good behavior, we talked about the fact that I think maybe that first day when he knocked, I think he's been furious about the archaeological dig in the garden for a long time and like waiting to bring that up. And I
Yeah.
think the fact that this went as badly as it did, it's like, guess what? I have another thing I'm annoyed about. It's not just your shoes,
Yeah.
it's the archaeological dig.
Right.
It's like, let's let it all out now.
Yep.
Okay? You're pissed about that. I'm also pissed about this.
And he closes the door and slams down the shade. It is not a meet cute again.
Yeah.
And it's thrilling that it isn't. And she goes home. And then, look, I can't get enough of Carrie and Miranda this season. I mean, anytime, because they're sort of both, I guess I'm going to say single. They're both kind of single now. They're grown ups.
That's true.
And Carrie's calling her, sitting in the bed with shoe in her lap and complaining about the shoes that she got. And Miranda's in her
Airbnb hell.
with the music going. But what I also love about this scene is the idea of Miranda gets a text from the Airbnb owner and Carrie's like, are you always reading texts when
that
we
was
talk?
a great discovery.
And this was a great conversation because these days, sadly, everyone's multitasking everywhere. It's like you see people walking down the street, talking, checking their texts. I mean, and the
But I'd
idea
also
that
believe
like
that-
is that
Well,
the
it's so funny.
the
firewall
people
of good
listening to
friendship?
this podcast are probably,
You're
checking their
Yes.
texting
or
at the
on
same
the
time.
treadmill
And
driving.
what I also love when after Cynthia, the actress, Cynthia Nixon says, only when we're on the phone, she makes a face that looks like she's illustrated by Charles Schultz in You're a Good Miranda, Charlie Brown. She literally goes like, I'm sorry, is that a mistake? And Carrie's feeling superior, but she's doing her version of texting, which is flipping through a magazine.
Right.
Old school.
Multi.
I'm sort of half paying attention and half looking at this magazine.
Well, also, it's a tell that he got to her. Like, he's under her skin. She couldn't just let it go. Like, it's on. Like, it's like I'm in a thing now with my downstairs neighbor.
Yeah. And then Miranda's decided she's had a thing with her next door neighbor. So she gets up, writes a note, and slides it under his door. And the door opens. And I have to say, I don't know what's the ham-fisted. I shoved this idea into the show. I put a naked man holding
It was amazing.
holding
It
a
was the
cleaver opens the
specificity
door
with socks.
with socks because otherwise it's naked and dirty.
Yeah.
With socks.
By the way, another production little
With
behind
socks,
the scenes.
it's what?
Socks says
wanna hear the end of
not
that.
sexual,
Okay,
casual.
okay.
I'm walking around my apartment and also the full body and I said to Julie, make sure you get him head to toe because if you don't get him head to toe, it's threatening. And if you see the whole thing and you see the socks and you see the cleaver, it's
funny.
It's a cartoon. You're a good dick, Charlie Brown. Like it's the same cartoon of violence. And then of course Cynthia does her classic Miranda scream.
Yeah, that was so funny.
I have to just tell a quick socks story on the day.
Socks in the city?
You had to.
I had to. It's right there.
I think either props didn't have a white pair of socks. Whatever they had, it wasn't reading on screen. You couldn't see the socks. And again, we were like down to the wire. We had no time. And they were like, I think we have to just roll. And I was like, we can't. We need those white socks. Like, how long will it take you to get the white
Who
socks?
took off their socks?
Well, then guys on set were like, I was like, do you have white socks? How high do they go on your calves? I'm not kidding. I was like, we just need white socks. And somebody ran up. We were on the stages. That guy was very patient. But I knew that was one of these things. Nobody's
No.
going
You had to
home
put
till
on
we get
someone
those
else's
socks.
socks?
No,
Yeah,
they ran down and got
It's subliminal.
props got the real
You
socks.
can say it's
Got
not
it, okay.
necessary, but on some level, on some dimension, it registers as slightly more funny because he's wearing white socks.
Okay, stepping back about 10 steps from this scene and looking back from an overview. one of the things we really wanted to do, and I believe it was your idea too, this was like another gut instinct when we saw how many rooms, lucky Carrie gets to have in her house. You, at the end of season 2, were like, Miranda needs to move in at some point. She has to stay there. And
that's partly out of shame
so,
for how many rooms Carrie has. Everybody in the room was like,
I mean, she
too
says
much.
it at the end of season 2.
Yes.
She says, I'm moving in.
So then, like, that's another gauntlet that gets laid down in the beginning of the season. This is going to happen. How is it going to happen? And that gauntlet combined with where the hell is Miranda going to be living until she finds her new apartment becomes the mashup of, like, this is the long journey to the Airbnb, the bad neighbor, we forgot in that phone call scene, the offer that Carrie throws out, then Miranda turning it down because they're grown-ups.
They're saying, I like to be alone. You like to be alone? No, I don't. I like to be alone.
Well, right. And also the crossing of the boundaries with Seema. Like, I don't think she takes
First
a small job
polite,
like that. Right.
Then calling each other on the truth.
Yes.
The idea that she says, do you think Seema can help get me an apartment? That's a line Carrie doesn't want to cross.
Which I love learning those little things. That's how I am. I would be afraid to mix. Like, what if then that friend is going to be mad at me? And Elisa's the opposite, so...
And I get cream pied all the time for it.
Well, or you find me my husband. So
that's
works.
True.
Basically, the amount of, and this seems very breezy and simple. Miranda moves in for a couple of days. This was the hardest. We threw out so many versions of this story.
It's true,
it was pages
script.
and pages of ideas. How do we get the bang for our buck, which we just wanted the fun? And what's too...
It's a big math problem,
yeah,
right?
it was a huge math problem. What's the fun of the two of them so that they can come in together and they say, this is like in Bank Street in the 90s.
Yes.
And what's too dismissive of each other's needs? That was where we went, like, how much of an asshole
rude,
is Miranda?
How thoughtless, how oblivious.
How unforgiving is Carrie? And like, it was a back and forth. But when we came up with the idea that the man with the meat cleaver forces her into Carrie's apartment, then we could have fun with the idea of noise, luggage wheeling in. And by the way, that scene of Miranda arriving with the luggage and the little straw backpack and Carrie in those paint-covered overalls, that to me is two 10-year-old girls just moving around, and then Carrie calls her out on her heels and then says the bitchiest thing Carrie's ever said to anyone. She says, could you take off your heels? You make a lot of noise.
And I love Miranda says, yours are on.
Yeah, she says, but you can hardly hear me. And then she goes, see? And then she opens the door. She hears a doorbell, and she thinks, now Duncan's here because of her heels. And she opens the door, and it's a surprise delivery from First Dibs. And what is it?
The table.
The grand romantic gesture. We wanted Aiden to be in this episode without him being in this episode. So here comes this big romantic gesture of Aiden buying this table, which she says is wood like you and sleek like me and weird like us right now. And so she's kind of overwhelmed.
And another little thing, a little Easter egg throughout the season. I remember, Michael, you were like, they're going to be like, wow, the table again? They're talking about the table? And it's like, yeah, we're gonna actually use that table as a through line.
Yeah.
It is
and
him.
a symbol.
It's him in the apartment waiting to come. It's sleek and it's empty, but it's there. And in this episode, it becomes more than the table.
Yeah, well, she says that she can see their life together at it. And I think that's very telling. She's been furnishing the place herself.
In her mind. But actually, she hasn't been furnishing the place. She hasn't done anything. And this is the first piece of furniture that they bought that is for them. And then Duncan comes down the street, and we see Miranda totally bails on the war that Carrie's having with Duncan, jumps in as a fangirl, suddenly produces her Winston Churchill out of no one. Carrie says,
happened to pack that.
Carrie says, where'd that book come from? Like out of nowhere. And he's so nice to Miranda.
Right. We wanted to show that he's not just a jerk.
Dick
he's
to
not
everyone.
walking around being an asshole.
No.
But like you see him smile for the
Carrie.
first time.
But he says, that she has no rugs, which then promotes Carrie to go get runners.
Oh, yeah.
Ugly runners.
This was, people have to understand the number of meetings that go into every choice for designing Carrie's house. The thought of putting these ugly runners down was really, it was hard. It was as hard for the department as it would be for Carrie.
So the interesting thing about after this, we go to the airport or the plane, and we see LTW and Marion on a plane, and we see he's funny and joking, and we see she's a nervous wreck because she's already late to go glamping, and she was in Atlanta, and he's a little flirty and cute, and she has to get by him, and she says, "I'll laugh at that on Monday," but you start to see that there's energy and that they were on the plane together, and that takes us to the most glamorous glamping site ever, which is Governor's Island. And
Now, the good news is about shooting on Governor's Island, it didn't rain that day. The bad news is it was really hot. 2 days, really
It
hot.
was, yeah.
But the main thing we wanted to do, A, show people the view from Governor's Island, which is, as you can see, amazing. B, and I will say, Elisa and I did do a little pre-scout of the spa that's coming
As a
up.
birthday
Oh, that's
present.
true.
Yes,
That's
it
true.
was. It was.
yeah, I mean, our goal was can we get there is a spa there. Can we get the spa? Because we knew we wanted the spa moment for the two of them after the glamping goes south. But can it have Manhattan in it? Can we get enough Manhattan? And when you go out to scout that, you're like, and I said to you guys when you came back from the spa, can you see the skyline? You're like, that's all you can see.
Yeah.
If you have a
True.
nice day, which
Yeah.
we did.
Right.
Yeah.
We scouted on a really cloudy, rainy, horrible day, and it was
Oh, I
like,
didn't realize
yikes,
that.
that's going to be hard. Yeah. But also for me, what I connect to as a mom is the impossible juggling act we're always doing as working moms, where you're trying to please everyone in every department at work, at home, and the fact that you see LTW frantically running off that plane, arrives, is so proud of herself. It's beautiful. She's ready to have fun. And then that one thing that she forgot, I think she would argue she didn't forget
I don't
because
think she
wasn't
forgot
told.
because she's
I don't think she
the
forgot.
chocolate for the s'mores.
Well,
Oh,
wait
you
a
think
minute.
he
I
dreamt
think
that?
I think he mentioned it, and I think she forgot.
I don't think he mentioned it.
I think she didn't hear it.
Oh, that's
I think
interesting.
I think he said it.
I
and
think if she had heard it, I think her line about "I've been walking around the Atlanta airport with nothing to do for hours." If you had said chocolate, I would have gotten chocolate.
You bought that.
Yeah, and I don't know whether she said glamping to him.
Right.
You know what I mean? I think that maybe it happened or maybe it didn't happen.
We say things in our head sometimes.
I think people think that you say
or
things.
maybe we don't listen to each other. I'm not sure.
Or maybe-
I think
Or
she was
both.
like she was getting her bag, like she was
Yeah.
checking in at the airport, or she was going through security, and he said it.
S'mores
and it didn't,
chocolate.
It didn't
All he
go
heard
in.
was-
Yes,
she heard was
Rachel,
s'mores
I'm
chocolate.
with you. I
S'mores
think that's,
chocolate.
Yeah.
But the
that's-
point
I
is,
buy
we
that.
also skipped a tiny little scene where Charlotte is in her house before the glamping, and both her kids come in and they decide they do not want to go glamping. And Rock says, "And we're a united front." Charlotte says, "You're going glamping," and Rock goes,
So
"I'm out."
I love your whole run of this, and she's still going
I
for
love
it.
rocking the scene.
Yeah, the idea that Charlotte now is holding on to glamping as something for Harry. She doesn't care what Lily wants, and Lily just wants to go date her pansexual boyfriend, and because
It's her weekend.
it's her weekend. And Charlotte looks at Anthony and says, "Anthony, can you believe this is parenting?" And he goes, "No, Char, I
Well,
cannot."
this is so you, Michael, whenever we talk about what we're dealing with our kids.
Yes.
It's like, what? Really?
Anyway,
is that what we're doing?
so back on Governor's
Chronic
Island,
disbelief.
we immediately hear LTW show up all happy, like Julie said, and are we having fun? And Lily is like, "This is a hostage situation," and Charlotte just snaps, "Stop it!" Like she's tough. And then, of course, the hairy runner is the mosquito, and he's saying it's like they're coming for me. And underneath, we're laying in the fact of the paranoia of they're coming for me. Something's wrong. They're going to get me. Is it cancer? Is it mosquitoes? He's feeling threatened, and she's feeling very
You're seeing
aware
the
of
stress of her having to hold it together. I
Right.
mean, that
Mhm.
scene in the kitchen where all she wants to do is tell Anthony, and he notices.
Yeah.
Are you
And now,
okay? You're very distracted.
and now back on Governor's Island, she's there and they're talking about chocolate and
Yeah.
did you not? And she just loses it and says it's chocolate, not cancer.
And, until this minute, I hadn't had this thought, but like planning a vacation, any vacation, is a little bit like Carrie buying the basket. Like, you have these visions of what it's going to be when you get on your vacation with your family, and then the reality, it can be pretty rough.
Not
you
as
know?
beautiful as the
Yeah.
vision.
As you already
You
said,
write the scenes.
as you already said, Duncan's gotten under Carrie's skin with, and now she's even further. He's from London. Who do we know who she knows who is
who
in
might be in
London?
London?
And it's Samantha. So this is our reach out to Samantha. It's just a little homage that they're both in London, and she wants information about this guy. So, of course, we do a little bit of a Sex and the City theme under
Yes,
it.
I have to say, because like I put in my music, then I send it to Michael, and you added that, and it was perfect.
Well, you just
That
have to have,
little
it's
Sex
like a
and the
little
City
perfume
music.
that goes through the room, and it's like, oh, yeah, that
It's a
show.
little variation on the Sex and the City
And
music.
so Samantha says he's supposed to be a lot of fun, and Carrie, why? And he says he's under me. I wish he was under me. But really, the story is Miranda's spending her first night at Joy's, and she wants to look good and sexy, but not walk of shame embarrassed in the morning. And so Carrie gives her a scarf, which Carrie says, it's nothing. I got it at a yard sale. And
I love them both kind of with their doors open and being very open with each other, and almost like college or like young 20s thing of getting ready and like, oh, does this look okay for what I'm like intending?
Yeah, they're like roommates, high-end roommates.
Yeah, and texting friends and, oh, why don't you wear this? So I liked that.
yeah, I mean, and then you cut into the romantic night with Joy in her bedroom, and there's
And the Greyhounds.
And the Greyhounds, which we love so much, Sappho and Socrates. And, the idea of a dog interfering sex is very interesting because I think a lot of people have experiences. I once was with this guy whose dog's name was Disco. And the dog kept jumping on the bed, and the guy just kept saying, "Get down, Disco." And all I kept hearing was, "Ooh, ooh, get down, Disco."
How did we not put that in the show, Michael? How is that not?
Well, it's here for the taking. But this is the two dogs complaining and whining because, A, they're not used to somebody being there in the bedroom.
Right.
And I will say, as I am not a dog owner, as I mentioned, and I'm surrounded by dog owners, but Elisa's dog, when I am there, does tend to make some noise. And now
When
I
you're having
understand.
Is that something you want to break? I said, get
Now
down,
is the
Disco.
time.
Breaking the
Julie.
news on this podcast.
Fantastic. But the reality is the dogs can get in the way because they are the significant lover. Those dogs are the love affair of her life, and her lovers are in the room.
Yeah, they're territorial.
But she says
They are not kicked out of that bedroom very often, I guess, or at all.
She says the very nice thing, which is, you look very right in here, to Miranda. And Miranda says, do I? But then the dogs start up again. And she puts the dogs in the hall, and you see kind of how strong of a disciplinarian Joy
I
is.
know. I love that mother moment for her. It's like her mom voice comes out.
And then they start again. And of course, it's
Not
all...
acceptable.
Writing is all a giant hidden manipulation. And in this story, we wanted her to go to Joy's...
We needed to get her back.
To get her surprised back and naked in front of Carrie, because we wanted Miranda to be horrified by somebody across from her, and then we wanted the mirror of Carrie being surprised by somebody naked across from her.
And also, we wanted to show, it's like, even at this age, they know each other so well, the things you do, you think you know everything, and then, okay, sleeping in the nude.
But come on. I have to stop here and say Miranda's wearing socks, too.
Well, yeah,
She's
that was
not
another
completely naked.
That was another sock
She's wearing
emergency,
socks,
by the way.
and Carrie walks into the wall because she's thrown. And here comes almost my favorite scene in a very long time, is the morning scene. You see the glamour. Carrie walks in like she's on, I don't know, Mount Olympus. She looks like a goddess. You see that table glistening. I mean, it is gorgeous. And then she walks into the kitchen, and Miranda's eating the yogurt.
I really enjoyed, because we knew Carrie back in the day when she did have a cigarette for breakfast.
And didn't eat.
Really enjoyed that, like, it's almost like Miranda felt like she was entirely in the right, because Carrie, A, doesn't eat yogurt, and B,
Right, because
doesn't
how
eat
would she
breakfast.
know what?
How would she know?
How would she
House
know?
yogurt.
Like, Carrie's secret single behavior.
Well,
you know,
she
like
says
she doesn't live with her.
She says, you don't eat yogurt.
eat.
And Carrie says, yes, I do. She says, since when? Since I'm 50. Like, it's just like a different world. And then she says, is that the last banana? And then you just realize, oh, wow, that was the moment that we tried to get to where someone was inappropriately ruining somebody else's life, but in a light way rather than
She's sort of polite and sort of apologetic.
That's when. Well, she is, and she
not
says,
really.
"I thought it was a house yogurt." Whose yogurt did you think it was? I don't know. I thought it was a house yogurt. And then Carrie says, a house yogurt. And then Cynthia and Miranda just look at her and go, come on, I just woke up. And Cynthia has the Miranda glasses on, and you're just like, yeah, don't. And then she notices no one's working because it's quiet when they should be working, meaning Adam and Jamie down there. And then Miranda's all suddenly like in a soap opera.
Also, she's such a narc. Like,
I
saw the whole thing.
Plus, she loves Duncan. Now she's involved in the Duncan world.
Ooh, she had a front row seat.
It was a whole thing.
It was a whole thing. And then Carrie tells him to resume working.
So back to Herbert and LTW in their glamping. We assume they smooth things over with chocolate. They're having their fun day. She's taking pictures. And this moment where he actually lays eyes on Marion, we wanted to make a meal of.
The selfie of the two of them.
Mm-hmm. And this idea of that's your editor. And I remember thinking, like, I think LTW, when you see a guy like that, it was like, yeah, he's hot. You can't pretend. You can't entirely be like, yeah.
What's the big deal?
And she gives sort of a little smile and just walking that edge of Herbert kind of not liking it and being jealous and also sort of ribbing her. Talk about getting your chocolate in Atlanta. And how for them in front of the kids, I remember Nicole felt like the fact that threesome thing came up in front of Gabby, she was like, that would make me so mad, but she's trying to keep it under wraps and to show them how do they fight in front of their kids, how do they keep the lid on? And they're sort of doing it and they're sort of signaling to each other like we shouldn't be having this argument, and then her hitting her wall. And I always like when we get to show LTW not being perfect and needing to get
well,
the
the
hell
thing
out
that's
of there.
interesting in this scene is there's one little parry back and forth between them where she says, Daddy's being silly, and he says, Mommy's being silly out of town, which is so cloak and dagger. And this scene is following, of course, the scene with Charlotte where she's trying to be all gung-ho and family, let's go for a walk and have this perfect weekend. And she comes in and they're all inside and Harry's screaming, zip up the tent. The kids are on their...
And it's not what she had in mind.
No, it's not what she
so
wants for
not,
Harry.
Yeah.
And so she then says, I need to go for a walk because she's starting to lose it. She says to the kids, you're never going to get this weekend back, which is in her head. She's thinking, if something bad happens, you'll think about this. And Harry says, cool, calm down. And so she leaves.
Again, she's tortured by this secret. This is like the most painful thing that she is being forced to walk around with.
Right.
It's like toxic for her.
And to drop back for a second, after the morning breakfast yogurt thing, the next offending thing the roommate does is Seema comes over to talk to Carrie because she's nervous. They come back from lunch and they're walking on the runners. And Miranda's at the clean table that is now filled with her work. And she's having Mexican food. And it's all very messy where she wanted to show Seema this beautiful oracle of a table. And Miranda understands she did something wrong. And Carrie tells Seema, you're off the runner. So Seema decides I better go outside and smoke. And Carrie says, smoke quietly. So it's all on this.
Everyone's getting on everyone's
her nerves.
And then Miranda wants to help Carrie clean up the table so she could show it, and they knock over the Coke. And it goes on like the computer, the homework, the thing, and then she grabs the scarf and she don't do that. And she says, you said it was nothing. And Carrie says, nothing I have is nothing. And then she go outside and you see Seema smoking and Jamie and Adam are there and he comes over. And this is the first real parry into Adam and Seema. And we've set him up as this organic green guy. And the first thing he says is, give me a drag.
And we learn he has a yogi girlfriend.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We wanted to make that very clear.
And you see the little beginning of the back and forth between them trying to figure out who each other is, but they like something there.
He can hang. He can hang with her banter. He can,
Yeah.
she'll kind of try to shut him down with like you're asking a South Asian woman if she's ever tried yoga, and he's able to
I don't like to profile,
Mm-hmm.
is what he
rally
says.
always
back.
has
Yeah,
something-
instead of being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like,
Right.
he's
No, I don't like to
playing,
profile.
yeah.
And then she says, how is this any of your business? He says, that's not. That's why I'm interested. And then, of course, Duncan, what's under the bridge in the fairy tales?
The
yeah, the
troll.
troll.
The
Oh,
bridge.
my
knock,
God.
knock, 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 knock. He makes a face.
Yeah.
He's
He's
so,
like the mean teacher, and
Yeah.
they're the kids
Yeah.
in the
And then they
class.
laugh because they're now caught.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Which we really wanted to see Seema with, like, we really wanted to see this side of Seema. She's been the siren, the femme fatale with these glamorous men, and we really wanted to see, like, who brings out the kid in Seema.
Yeah. Yes,
And
who can
like,
disarm
this
her.
definitely.
Yeah, and I always said to her, it's like you're the smart girl in class talking to the jock. Like, it's that kind of like a parry back and
right.
forth.
Yeah.
You
even-
shouldn't be in the
You
same scene.
shouldn't be in the same scene.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
yet-
And she's almost already disarmed too in her work life. Like, she's going through all this disarming stuff. So it almost like she's already disarmed when she kind of meets him. And I feel like if she had been in a point in her life where she was successful and, still looking for the right guy or whatever, the wall would have just gone up
Yeah,
in a way
she's got
Yes.
a lot of pressure on her. And when she comes back
Yeah.
into the apartment, she admits that, yes, the lady did not give her the loan either. And so now she doesn't know what to do. But that's not before Carrie and Miranda both comically say,
Yeah.
I think we know what we're both thinking. And Carrie says, yes, never leave. Stay here
We
forever.
wanted them both to come to that
Yeah.
on their own. We felt
She
like
says, yeah.
They're
we're-
just too, let's face it, they're too old to be
They're stuck
roomies.
in their ways.
'Cause
They're
we're
just
yeah.
not the golden
Well,
girls.
she says it's not Bank
not
Street in the
Bank-
yeah.
90s because we're in
Yeah.
the 90s. And then Carrie does the ultimate friend sacrifice. She goes past her comfort level and she says to Seema, can you please help Miranda find an apartment?
back to the spa.
Yeah. After LTW leaves the very heated tent moment with Herbert, she finds Charlotte after her very heated tense moment with her family. And they're just standing there with that gorgeous shot of the city behind them. And we've already established that there's a spa on the island. So they wind up in the spa. And this is one of my favorite scenes.
I want to just share what was surprising to me about Kristen and Nicole's feelings about that scene, which was when LTW says, do you want to talk about it? When Charlotte
Mhm.
says, I have a lot on my mind. The fact that Charlotte says, she shakes her head and says no, they were like, God, I mean, Kristen was like, I don't want to like shut her down. And it was like, you're not. That's you asking for another kind of support. And
Yeah.
the fact that Nicole reaches her arm out and was sort of like,
Touches her back.
and
Yeah.
I feel
I
like
love
we've
that,
had
yeah.
that, Lise,
Yeah.
where it's like, I know if
I
there's
can't-
something you
yeah.
can't talk about, it must be so
It's heartbreaking.
And
And
to
sweet.
be able to say that to a friend means that they're a really close friend. Because sometimes you don't
Yeah.
want to put words to your feelings.
Right. And sometimes words don't do it, but a touch
Mhm.
does. And the
Yeah.
look on Kristen's face when Nicole touches her shoulder and where LTW touches Charlotte is
love
just,
it.
it's the whole reason we did the Governor's Island, because we knew that last moment was, do you want to talk about it? No, because she cannot. And then we come back to the garden and we see Carrie talking to Adam and Jamie, and she's saying how good it's coming along. And then a smoke alarm goes off, and she breaks into Duncan's apartment, which is filled with smoke that he doesn't even know about.
And the evolution of the little fire in his apartment was, we knew we wanted to get them out for dinner. And originally it was like, how in this episode did she go from all of those yucky,
You're right.
fighty things? Like, it has to be an organic, in the moment, let's go somewhere in the neighborhood. Like, it had, and
we had to earn it.
yeah, we really had to work hard to come up with that.
And also the tie-in that the only thing that can stop the fire is her in a shoe. Aren't you glad I'm wearing heels? It's the first time we see him laugh, and then he says, well, there goes dinner.
Yeah.
Right.
And then you cut to this neighborhood place. It feels like a neighborhood place. And she finally says to him, I hear you're supposed to be fun. When's that going to start?
And again, we wanted to make sure that in this scene, it wasn't too like, okay, now they're
on,
just
right.
into it, but that I so believe, I feel like I've had this with people at a party or a dinner party where he's barely taking her in when he says, you said you write?
No, he said you were a writer.
Said
I
you were a
think that's
writer?
the beginning of him sort of
He's
saying,
almost
is there
seeing her for the
something here
first-
for me? Which is,
Right.
I'm writing about a
Right.
woman and I'm worried that people won't accept a woman from me. He admits why he's been so anxious. And she says, I'm anxious because I'm trying something new too,
And then-
writing a book.
And
Yeah.
the idea that like him, I feel like the most human moment for him is when he says, dear God, that place is going to be
Filled with anxiety.
anxiety.
Vibrating.
Vibrating.
With
But-
anxiety.
But the reality is...
Which makes it a little bit sexy.
tiny bit accidentally sexy.
Vibrating.
And also, it's two writers talking. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
They're both talking
Yeah.
about writing. And then Carrie comes home, steps into her apartment, and because he's a fellow writer and she understands writing anxiety,
And because he's finally given her the time of day.
Yeah.
And they've had a conversation that's been
He's
respectful.
humanized.
And they are meeting each other even on a brief little meal, eye to eye.
she
She-
decides to do what he requested
to
and
be
step out of
considerate.
her shoes,
Mhm.
which is a big deal for us.
Yeah. And for her.
Mhm.
And just like that, we reached the end of episode 5, season 3, Under the Table. Thanks so much to Julie, Elisa, and Rachel for joining. We had a great time this week, and next week we'll be back to talk about episode 6, Silent Mode. And as ever, you can stream new episodes of In Just Like That Thursdays on Max. And Just Like That, The Writer's Room is produced by Sony Music Podcasts for Max. At Sony, Sharon Morris is the executive producer, Gianna Palmer is the lead producer, Sammy Allison is head of production. Tamika Balance-Kalasny is our production manager, and Sam Baer is our engineer. Special thanks to Becky Rowe, Allison Cohen-Sorokach, Kenya Reyes, and Aaron Kelly from the Max Podcast team. Thank you for listening.